Welcome to The Director. Today, I bring you a story I like to call The Rain That Changed Everything. Imagine this. A millionaire, living a life of luxury, stumbles upon two young girls crying in the pouring rain. He takes them home, thinking it's just an act of kindness. But what he discovers the next morning, a mysterious note, reveals a past so dark, it changes his life forever. What secrets are they hiding? And how far will he go to protect them? Stay tuned, because this is a journey of love, justice, and transformation like no other. The rain poured down in relentless sheets, soaking the cobblestone streets and blurring the glow of the street lamps. Nathaniel Hayes, a man of striking presence and wealth, stepped out of his luxury car, adjusting his umbrella against the deluge. His sharp eyes, accustomed to boardrooms and investment meetings, caught an unusual sight that stopped him mid-step. Huddled against the wall of a closed bakery were two small girls, shivering and clinging to each other for warmth. Their clothes were thin, drenched, and their faces pale with exhaustion. The sight pulled at something deep inside him, a rare, unexpected pang of compassion. For a moment, Nathaniel hesitated. His world was polished and controlled, with little room for the chaos of others' lives. Yet, as the rain plastered his hair to his forehead, he couldn't turn away. The younger girl let out a soft, heart-wrenching sob, and the older one tightened her arm around her sister, as though trying to shield her from a world that had clearly failed them. Nathaniel closed the umbrella, his tailored suit soaking instantly, and crouched in front of them. "Hey," he said gently, his deep voice softened by genuine concern. "What are you doing out here in this weather?" The girls flinched but didn't answer. The older one, who couldn't have been older than 8, stared at him with wary, piercing eyes. It was a look Nathaniel recognized all too well. The look of someone who had learned not to trust too easily. "It's okay," he added, pulling off his scarf. "I just want to help." The younger girl whimpered, her face buried in her sister's shoulder. Finally, the older one spoke, her voice hoarse and shaky. "We don't have anywhere to go." Nathaniel felt his chest tighten at the simplicity of her words. He nodded slowly, extending his hand. "Come with me. I'll make sure you're safe." It took several long seconds of hesitation before the older girl grasped his hand. Nathaniel helped them into the car, their small bodies trembling as they sank into the leather seats. As his driver pulled away, he studied them silently, wondering what kind of life could leave children so vulnerable and alone. Nathaniel's mansion loomed like a fortress against the stormy night. The wrought iron gates opened to reveal sprawling grounds, the gardens drenched but still immaculate. The car stopped in front of the grand entrance where Margaret, Nathaniel's longtime housekeeper, waited with a concerned expression. She hurried forward as Nathaniel stepped out, holding the younger girl in his arms while the older one followed closely, clutching his sleeve. "Mr. Hayes, who are these children?" Margaret asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and worry. "They were alone on the street," Nathaniel replied simply, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I couldn't just leave them there." Margaret's gaze softened as she ushered them inside. "Poor dears. Let's get them warm and fed." The twins stood awkwardly in the expansive foyer, their wide eyes taking in the marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and towering staircase. It was a world they could hardly comprehend. Nathaniel knelt in front of them, his voice calm and reassuring. "You're safe here. Margaret will take care of you, and we'll figure everything out tomorrow." The younger girl, Grace, finally looked up, her big eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Nathaniel felt a lump in his throat, but only nodded, standing as Margaret led them to a guest room. That night, Nathaniel couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire in his study, swirling a glass of scotch in his hand, his mind racing with questions. Who were these girls? Where were their parents? What had driven them to such desperate circumstances? His own childhood flashed through his mind. Memories of a boy who had also known loneliness and fear, though not to the extent he had seen tonight. It was a past he rarely thought about, let alone shared. But something about Emily and Grace stirred those memories, and he felt an unfamiliar sense of responsibility. The fire crackled, the only sound in the otherwise silent house. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the flames. He had built an empire from nothing, turning his ambition into unimaginable wealth. Yet, for all his success, he had never found the one thing that truly mattered: connection. As the storm raged outside, Nathaniel made a silent promise. He would help these girls, no matter what it took. He didn't know yet what their story was or what challenges lay ahead, but he felt certain that meeting them on that rain-soaked street wasn't a coincidence. It was the beginning of something much greater, a transformation that would change all their lives forever. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Nathaniel's mansion, casting soft, golden light on the luxurious furniture and polished floors. The sound of faint footsteps echoed in the hall as Margaret quietly moved about her tasks, her thoughts preoccupied with the two little girls now under their roof. She had placed them in one of the guest rooms, ensuring they were warm and comfortable. Still, their fragile faces haunted her, especially the haunted look in the older girl's eyes. Nathaniel, who rarely woke before 8, was already in the kitchen, an unusual sight in itself. He stood near the counter, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, his thoughts heavy. When Margaret entered, he turned to her with an uncharacteristic expression of concern. "How are they?" he asked, breaking the silence. "They slept well," Margaret replied, wiping her hands on her apron. "But they're wary, Mr. Hayes. They've been through something. I can see it." The older one, Emily, hardly says a word, and the younger one clings to her like a lifeline. Nathaniel nodded, his jaw tightening. "I need to know what happened to them. But first, let's make sure they feel safe. That's all that matters for now." In the guest room, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, watching her sister Grace, who was still asleep. The room was unlike anything they had ever seen: soft bedding, plush rugs, and curtains that shimmered faintly in the morning light. But despite the comfort, Emily couldn't relax. Her instincts told her that no place was truly safe, not after everything they had endured. Grace stirred, rubbing her eyes before sitting up and glancing at her sister. "Are we staying here?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with both hope and uncertainty. "For now," Emily replied, her tone guarded. "But we don't know him. We have to be careful." Before Grace could respond, there was a gentle knock at the door. Margaret peeked in, her warm smile easing some of Emily's tension. "Good morning, girls," she said kindly. "I brought you some breakfast." The tray she carried was filled with toast, eggs, and fresh fruit, a spread so lavish that Grace's eyes widened in amazement. Emily hesitated before giving a small nod of thanks. Margaret set the tray down and gestured toward the bathroom. "There are fresh clothes for you both, and I'll be just outside if you need anything." Downstairs, Nathaniel sat in his study, scrolling through his phone as he tried to piece together what to do next. He had already called a trusted friend who worked with child services to inquire about their options. The girls needed more than shelter. They needed stability, care, and most importantly, answers. As if on cue, Margaret entered the room with a concerned expression. "Mr. Hayes, the girls mentioned something last night," she began. "Emily said their parents are gone. She didn't say much else, but I get the feeling it's a painful story." Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "I'll give them time," he said, "but we need to know the truth. If there's anyone out there looking for them, we need to act fast." Margaret hesitated, then added, "They're good kids, sir. Polite, even in their fear. They just need someone to show them they're not alone." Nathaniel nodded, his resolve hardening. He didn't know why he felt so drawn to these girls, but he couldn't ignore the pull. Whether it was guilt for his own lonely childhood or a newfound sense of purpose, he knew one thing for certain: Emily and Grace weren't just passing through his life. They were here to stay. Later that day, Nathaniel found the girls sitting quietly in the sunroom. Grace was drawing with crayons Margaret had given her, while Emily sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. her expression guarded. Nathaniel approached slowly, his movements careful, as though not to spook them. "How are you settling in?" he asked, his voice warm but gentle. Grace looked up with a shy smile, but Emily didn't meet his gaze. "It's nice," she said after a pause, her voice barely audible. Nathaniel crouched to their level, trying to convey sincerity. "I want you both to feel safe here. No one will hurt you, I promise." Emily finally looked at him, her young face carrying a weight far beyond her years. "Why are you helping us?" she asked, her tone laced with suspicion. The question caught Nathaniel off guard. He thought for a moment before replying honestly. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone, and no one deserves that, especially not you." Emily studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching for any hint of deceit. Finally, she gave a small nod, though her guard didn't drop completely. As the day turned into evening, Nathaniel found himself reflecting on the events unfolding in his home. He had built his life around wealth and success, but none of it had ever felt as significant as this simple act of kindness. Watching the girls slowly open up, Grace's giggles filling the house as Margaret played games with her, and Emily's hesitant trust beginning to show, was more fulfilling than any business deal he had ever closed. But questions still lingered. Who were these girls really? What had they endured? And what secrets were they still keeping? Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger story, one he was now irrevocably a part of. As he stood by the window, gazing out at the darkening sky, a thought struck him. Some transformations begin not with grand gestures, but with small, quiet moments of compassion. And though he didn't know it yet, his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The first sign that something was amiss came when Nathaniel returned from a brief trip to his downtown office. He had left the girls in Margaret's capable hands, confident they were settling into the quiet safety of his home. But as he walked into the foyer, the echo of his footsteps seemed louder than usual. A peculiar stillness hung in the air. He set his briefcase down and called out, "Margaret? Girls!" Margaret appeared from the kitchen, her face clouded with worry. "They're in their room, Mr. Hayes," she said. "But I think you should see something." Nathaniel followed her up the grand staircase, his brow furrowed. Margaret led him to the guest room where Emily and Grace were staying. The room was neat, the girls sitting on the bed with downcast eyes. Margaret silently handed him a small, crumpled note she had found on the nightstand. The handwriting was uneven, clearly written by a child, but the words were hauntingly clear. "We don't want to cause trouble. Thank you for everything. Please don't try to find us." Nathaniel's chest tightened as he reread the note. He looked at Emily, whose face was a mask of defiance, though her trembling hands betrayed her. "Emily," he began carefully, "what is this about? Why would you leave a note like this?" The girl's eyes darted to Grace, who was biting her lip to keep from crying. "You've already done too much for us," Emily said, her voice steadier than expected for her age. "We don't belong here." Nathaniel crouched to meet Emily's gaze, his tone soft but firm. "That's not true. You belong somewhere safe, and right now, that's here. I need you to trust me." Emily hesitated, her small fingers clutching the hem of her shirt. For a moment, Nathaniel thought she might remain silent, but then she spoke, her words tumbling out in a rush. "People like us don't get happy endings. They find us. They always do." Nathaniel exchanged a concerned glance with Margaret before returning his focus to Emily. "Who finds you?" he asked gently. Emily shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't say. They'll hurt Grace if I do." Grace whimpered at her sister's words, clutching the stuffed animal Margaret had given her earlier. Nathaniel felt a surge of protectiveness unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "No one is going to hurt either of you," he said with quiet determination. "Not while you're here." Margaret stepped in, her voice soothing. "Emily, we're on your side. Whatever you're afraid of, we'll figure it out together. You don't have to carry this by yourself." That night, Nathaniel sat in his study, the note still clutched in his hand. His mind raced with possibilities, each more troubling than the last. Clearly, the girls were running from something or someone, but the details remained maddeningly out of reach. The revelation left him restless, unable to focus on anything else. He decided to call Carter Thompson, his longtime lawyer and trusted confidant. Carter was a meticulous man, known for solving problems most would consider unsolvable. If anyone could help unravel this mystery, it was him. "Carter, it's Nathaniel," he began as soon as the call connected. "I need your help with something personal. It's sensitive." Carter listened intently as Nathaniel explained the situation, his tone growing more serious with every word. "It sounds like these girls have been through something traumatic," Carter said. "We'll need to dig into their background, but we have to tread carefully. If they're running from someone dangerous, we can't risk exposing them further." Nathaniel agreed, his resolve hardening. "Start with the basics. Find out if they've been reported missing. I want to know everything we can without putting them in harm's way." Carter promised to get to work immediately, and as Nathaniel hung up, he felt a sliver of hope. He wasn't sure what answers they would find, but he knew he couldn't rest until he uncovered the truth. The following day, Nathaniel approached the girls with a careful plan. He didn't want to pressure them, but he hoped to earn their trust enough for them to open up. He found them in the garden, where Margaret had coaxed them outside for some fresh air. Grace was picking flowers, her giggles a rare, heartwarming sound, while Emily sat on a bench, watching her sister with a guarded expression. Nathaniel sat down beside Emily, keeping a respectful distance. "Emily," he began, "I know you're trying to protect Grace, and I respect that, but I need you to help me understand what you're afraid of. The more I know, the better I can help." Emily glanced at him, her expression conflicted. "You can't help." "No one can," she muttered. "Maybe not," Nathaniel replied honestly. "But I can try, and you deserve someone who's willing to try." Emily's lip quivered, and for the first time, her mask cracked. "It was the orphanage," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They were supposed to take care of us, but they didn't." Nathaniel's heart sank at her words. "What happened there?" he asked gently. Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "They hurt us. They hurt everyone. And if they find out we're gone, they'll come for us." Nathaniel spent the rest of the evening poring over the implications of Emily's confession. The words orphanage abuse replayed in his mind, each repetition fueling his anger and determination. No child should have to endure such horrors, and the thought that someone might still be out there looking for them made his blood boil. The phone rang late that night, breaking the tense silence. It was Carter, his tone grim. "Nathaniel, I found something. There are reports of an orphanage under investigation for mistreatment and illegal practices. It's been shut down, but some of the staff are still unaccounted for. I think this might be connected to your girls." Nathaniel gripped the phone tightly. "Then we find them," he said, his voice steely. "And we make sure those girls never have to look over their shoulders again." As he hung up, Nathaniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The mystery surrounding Emily and Grace was far from solved, but one thing was clear. He wouldn't rest until justice was served and the girls were truly safe. Nathaniel awoke with a sense of purpose sharper than he'd felt in years. The morning light streamed into his study as he reviewed the notes Carter had sent overnight. Details of the orphanage's abuse were grim. Allegations of neglect, physical harm, and financial fraud painted a harrowing picture. Worse, several staff members, including the director, had vanished when the facility was shut down. Nathaniel's fist clenched as he imagined what Emily and Grace had endured. He knew he couldn't fight this battle alone. His first call was to Carter. "I want you to prioritize this," Nathaniel said firmly. "I don't care what it costs or how long it takes. Track these people down, every single one of them." Carter, ever methodical, replied with calm determination. "I've already put a team on it. But, Nathaniel, you'll need someone who knows the inner workings of that place. Someone the girls trust." Nathaniel considered this. Do you think anyone from the orphanage might be willing to help? Surely not everyone there was complicit. There's one possibility, Carter said after a pause. Her name's Olivia Harper. She was a caregiver who reported the abuse to authorities. From what I've gathered, she's dedicated her life to helping kids like Emily and Grace. Nathaniel nodded. Find her. I want to talk to her as soon as possible. That afternoon, Nathaniel found Emily sitting in the library, flipping through a book with unseeing eyes. Grace was nearby, coloring on a large sheet of paper. They both looked more at ease than when they first arrived, but Emily's tension was never far from the surface. Nathaniel approached carefully, taking a seat across from her. "Emily, I need your help," he said, his tone serious but kind. Emily blinked, caught off guard. "My help?" "Yes," he said. "I'm trying to make sure the people who hurt you and Grace are brought to justice. But to do that, I need to know more about what happened and who was involved." The girl's small hands tightened around the edges of the book. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "They don't stop. Even when the orphanage closed, they found ways to keep going." Nathaniel leaned forward, his gaze steady. "That's why I need to stop them. You've been brave enough to protect Grace all this time. Let me help protect both of you now." Emily hesitated, her eyes darting to Grace, who was happily humming as she colored. Finally, she nodded, though her shoulders remained tense. "There was one lady," she said quietly, "Miss Olivia. She was nice. She tried to help us, but they fired her when she spoke up." Nathaniel's heart swelled with hope. "We've already reached out to her. If she's willing, she might be able to help us build a case against the orphanage." Emily gave him a tentative look. "Do you think she'll remember us?" "I think she'll be relieved to know you're safe," Nathaniel replied gently. The next day, Olivia Harper arrived at Nathaniel's mansion, her presence unassuming but resolute. She was a woman in her mid-30s with kind eyes that immediately softened when she saw Emily and Grace. The girls had been hesitant at first, but as soon as Olivia crouched to their level and spoke their names, Grace launched herself into her arms, tears streaming down her face. "I thought we'd never see you again," Grace sobbed, her small hands clutching Olivia's shirt. Olivia held her tightly, her own eyes glistening. "I've thought about you too every single day," she whispered. "You're so brave, both of you." Emily stood a few feet away, her arms crossed defensively, but there was a flicker of recognition and relief in her expression. Olivia extended a hand toward her. "I'm so glad you're safe, Emily," she said softly. After a long pause, Emily took her hand, her fingers trembling. "You really tried to help us," she said, her voice barely audible. "I did," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "And I'll keep trying. You have my word." Nathaniel observed the reunion from a distance, his respect for Olivia growing by the second. When the girls were calm, he gestured for her to join him in the study. As they sat down, Nathaniel wasted no time. "Olivia, I want to take these people down, not just for Emily and Grace, but for every child they've hurt. Will you help me?" Olivia's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with resolve. "I've been waiting for someone with the resources to fight this battle," she said. "I've kept records, names, dates, everything I could gather before they fired me. It's not enough for a full case, but it's a start." Carter, who had joined the meeting via video call, chimed in. "That's exactly what we need. Combined with what my team is uncovering, we'll have enough to pursue legal action." Olivia nodded, "But it won't be easy. These people are ruthless. They'll do whatever it takes to avoid being held accountable." Nathaniel's expression hardened. "So will I. I'm not letting them get away with this." Over the next few weeks, Nathaniel's mansion became a hub of activity. Olivia worked tirelessly with Carter's team, sharing every detail she had on the orphanage's operations. Emily and Grace, though still cautious, began to feel the weight of their fears lifting as they saw adults fighting for them. Nathaniel made it a point to check in with the girls daily, ensuring they knew they weren't alone. Grace often sought him out, her cheerful chatter a welcome distraction from the gravity of their situation. Emily, though quieter, occasionally joined him in the study, her guarded demeanor slowly softening. One evening, as they sat together in the library, Emily looked up from her book. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked, her voice small. Nathaniel met her gaze, his expression resolute. "Not yet," he admitted, "but it will be. And I promise, you and Grace will never have to go through this again." Emily nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and doubt. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Weeks passed, and the mansion that once echoed with silence now hummed with a quiet warmth. Emily and Grace were beginning to adapt to their new surroundings, though their journey to trust and healing was far from complete. For Nathaniel, life had shifted dramatically. His once-ordered world, defined by financial strategies and business deals, now revolved around the needs and emotions of two fragile but resilient little girls. One afternoon, Nathaniel sat in his study, flipping through legal documents Carter had sent. The case against the orphanage was progressing, thanks in large part to Olivia's meticulous records and testimony. Still, Nathaniel's thoughts drifted to the girls. They were safe under his roof, but their future felt uncertain. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, setting the papers aside. The door opened to reveal Grace, clutching a stuffed animal and looking hesitant. "Can I sit with you?" she asked, her voice small. Nathaniel smiled, gesturing to the couch near his desk. "Of course. What's on your mind, Grace?" She climbed up onto the couch, holding her stuffed rabbit tightly. "Emily says we shouldn't get used to being here," she said, her eyes wide and questioning. "But I like it here. I like you." Her words hit Nathaniel harder than he expected. He crossed the room, kneeling in front of her. "Grace, you and Emily are always welcome here," he said, his voice steady. "You're a part of my family now." Grace's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "Really? Really?" Nathaniel replied, his heart swelling as he realized just how much he meant it. Meanwhile, Olivia's presence in the house had become a steady source of comfort for the girls. Her warmth and understanding seemed to bridge the gap between their fears and the safety they were beginning to feel. Olivia often spent her afternoons reading with Emily, who was still hesitant to fully trust Nathaniel, but had grown attached to Olivia in a quiet, unspoken way. One evening, Nathaniel found Olivia in the kitchen, preparing a snack for the girls. "You've made quite an impact on them," he said, leaning against the counter. Olivia looked up, smiling. "They're incredible kids. After everything they've been through, they still have so much strength." Nathaniel nodded, his expression serious. "I've been thinking a lot about their future. I don't want them to feel like this is temporary. They deserve stability, a real home." Olivia studied him for a moment. "Are you thinking about adoption?" she asked gently. Nathaniel exhaled, his gaze distant. "I've never imagined myself as a father, but now, I can't imagine not having them in my life." Olivia's smile widened. They couldn't ask for a better one. Her words lingered with him long after she left the kitchen. The next day, Nathaniel decided to broach the subject with Emily. He found her in the garden, sitting under a tree with a book in her lap. Grace was nearby, chasing butterflies with Margaret. Nathaniel approached slowly, taking a seat on the grass beside her. "Emily," he began, "can we talk for a minute?" She looked up, her expression cautious. "Okay, I've been thinking a lot about you and Grace," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I want to make sure you both have a place to call home, a place where you know you're safe and loved." Emily's brow furrowed. "We're already here," she said, her tone wary. "Yes, but I mean something permanent," Nathaniel explained. "I want to adopt you and Grace, if that's something you'd want." Emily stared at him, her emotions flickering between hope and disbelief. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because I care about you," Nathaniel said honestly. "And because I think we've already started building something that feels like a family." "Don't you?" Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked away, her voice trembling. "I don't know what a family is supposed to feel like." Nathaniel reached out, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It feels like this," he said softly, "like knowing someone will always be there for you, no matter what." Emily didn't respond, but she didn't pull away. For Nathaniel, it was a step in the right direction. That evening, Nathaniel gathered the girls and Olivia in the living room. He had made a decision and wanted them all to hear it. As they sat together, the flickering fire casting a warm glow across the room, Nathaniel took a deep breath. "I want to share something with all of you," he began, his voice steady. "I've decided to move forward with adopting Emily and Grace. You both mean the world to me, and I want to make this official." Grace's face lit up, and she launched herself into his arms. "Really?" she exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. "Really?" Nathaniel said, holding her tightly. Emily sat quietly, her expression unreadable. But when Nathaniel looked at her, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As the room filled with a sense of hope and new beginnings, Nathaniel's gaze met Olivia's. Her smile was radiant, and for the first time, he realized just how much she had become a part of this makeshift family. The thought planted a seed in his mind, one that would grow in the days to come. Life in the mansion settled into a new rhythm. The adoption process began, with Carter handling the legalities and Olivia continuing to support the girls emotionally. For Nathaniel, every step solidified his belief that this was the path he was meant to take. Emily and Grace began to thrive in ways no one had expected. Grace's laughter echoed through the halls, and Emily, while still reserved, began to show glimpses of a playful, curious child beneath her guarded exterior. Nathaniel found himself marveling at how much joy they brought to his life. One evening, as they all sat down for dinner, Emily spoke up unexpectedly. "Mr. Hayes," she said quietly. "Nathaniel," he corrected gently, smiling at her. Emily hesitated before continuing. "Nathaniel, thank you for everything." Her words, though simple, carried a weight that left the room silent. Nathaniel reached across the table, squeezing her hand gently. "You don't have to thank me, Emily. We're a family now." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity and change. The adoption process was officially underway, and though the legalities were tedious, Nathaniel faced them with unwavering determination. For Emily and Grace, the reality of becoming part of Nathaniel's family began to sink in, slowly replacing their fears with hope. Yet, amidst the joy of this new chapter, an unexpected element was quietly unfolding. Nathaniel's growing bond with Olivia. Olivia had become an integral part of their daily lives, her gentle guidance and unwavering compassion serving as a balm for the girls' lingering wounds. Nathaniel found himself drawn to her kindness and strength, qualities that had become as essential to their family as the warmth of the mansion itself. One evening, as they worked side by side in the study, reviewing notes for the ongoing case against the orphanage, Nathaniel caught himself staring. "Something on your mind?" Olivia asked, her tone light but curious. Nathaniel hesitated before replying, his voice softer than usual. "Just wondering how I got so lucky to have you here." Olivia blinked in surprise, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "I think the girls would say the same about you," she said, deflecting with a small smile. Nathaniel chuckled but didn't push further. For now, the unspoken connection between them was enough, though he couldn't deny that it was becoming harder to ignore. The case against the orphanage gained momentum as Carter and his team uncovered more damning evidence. Former victims began coming forward, their testimonies painting an even darker picture than anyone had anticipated. Olivia, too, played a crucial role, her first-hand accounts adding credibility and depth to the case. Despite the heavy subject matter, these efforts brought the makeshift family closer together. Nathaniel often found himself marveling at how naturally Olivia fit into their lives. She knew exactly how to calm Emily's nerves during court-related discussions and how to coax Grace into laughter on even the most stressful days. One Saturday morning, as they all gathered in the garden for a rare moment of relaxation, Grace pulled Olivia aside. "Are you going to stay with us forever?" she asked innocently, her big eyes filled with curiosity. Olivia crouched to her level, brushing a stray lock of hair from Grace's face. "I'll be here as long as you need me," she replied. Grace tilted her head thoughtfully. "What if Nathaniel needs you too?" Olivia's breath caught, but before she could respond, Grace scampered off to chase a butterfly. The question lingered, however, and Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps Grace wasn't the only one wondering the same thing. That evening, as the girls were tucked into bed, Nathaniel found Olivia in the library, her expression distant as she gazed out the window. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, stepping into the room. Olivia turned, her smile faint but warm. "Just thinking about how far the girls have come. It's incredible, really." "It's because of you," Nathaniel said simply, his voice carrying an earnestness that made her pause. "I think it's because of all of us," Olivia replied, though her tone wavered slightly. Nathaniel took a step closer, his gaze steady. "Maybe, but I can't ignore what you've done for them, or for me." Olivia's brow furrowed. "Nathaniel, you've given them everything they could ever need. You're their hero." Nathaniel shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You're wrong. We've done this together. And if I'm honest, I don't think I could have done it without you." The weight of his words hung in the air, unspoken feelings swirling between them. Olivia looked down, her hands clasped tightly. "This isn't what I expected when I came here," she admitted. "Neither did I," Nathaniel said softly. "But maybe it's what we both needed." The following days were marked by subtle but significant shifts. Nathaniel and Olivia found themselves gravitating toward each other more often, their conversations growing deeper, their silences more comfortable. The girls, ever perceptive, seemed to notice as well. Grace, in particular, made no effort to hide her excitement. One evening, as Nathaniel read to the girls before bed, Grace blurted out, "Are you going to marry Miss Olivia?" Nathaniel froze, his eyes widening as Emily stifled a giggle. "Grace," Emily hissed, though she was clearly amused. Nathaniel glanced at Olivia, who stood in the doorway, her cheeks flushed but her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Well," Nathaniel said, clearing his throat, "that's a big question, Grace. What makes you ask?" "Because you like her," Grace said matter-of-factly. "And she likes you." Olivia laughed softly, stepping into the room. "Okay, little matchmaker," she said, ruffling Grace's hair. "Time for bed." As Olivia tucked the girls in, Nathaniel couldn't help but smile. Grace's innocent comment had been embarrassing, but it had also planted a seed in his mind, one that he realized had been growing for some time. Later that night, Nathaniel found Olivia in the garden, sitting on a bench beneath the stars. He joined her, the cool evening air carrying the faint scent of flowers. "Grace has a way of getting straight to the point," he said, his tone light but meaningful. Olivia laughed softly. "She certainly does." Nathaniel hesitated for a moment before taking a deep breath. "Olivia, I've been thinking about what she said, and she's not wrong." Olivia turned to him, her expression cautious but curious. Nathaniel, he met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of vulnerability and determination. "I care about you, more than I ever thought I could care about anyone. You've become such an important part of our lives, and I can't imagine the future without you in it." Olivia's breath hitched, her heart pounding as his words sank in. "Nathaniel, He reached for her hand, his touch gentle. "I don't want to rush you or put you on the spot, but I needed you to know how I feel." For a long moment, they sat in silence, the night enveloping them. Finally, Olivia squeezed his hand, a smile breaking through her uncertainty. "I care about you too," she said softly. And the girls. This feels right. Nathaniel's chest swelled with relief and joy. Then let's take it one step at a time, he said, his smile matching hers. As the stars shone above them, Nathaniel and Olivia shared a quiet moment of understanding. Their hearts aligned in a way that felt undeniable. It wasn't just the beginning of their relationship. It was the start of a new chapter for all of them. The adoption ceremony was set for a crisp autumn morning, the kind of day where the air was fresh and carried the promise of change. For Nathaniel, it felt like the culmination of everything he'd been working toward. The sleepless nights, the emotional hurdles, and the legal battles. Emily and Grace, dressed in matching navy blue dresses Margaret had helped them pick out, were a bundle of excitement and nerves. The courthouse, often a cold and intimidating place, felt almost warm with the presence of friends and supporters who had gathered to witness the occasion. Nathaniel knelt beside the girls before they entered the courtroom, his hands resting gently on their shoulders. "You ready?" he asked, his voice soft. Grace nodded enthusiastically, her wide smile lighting up her face. "Ready," she declared. Emily hesitated, her eyes searching his. "This means we're really staying?" Nathaniel's heart ached at the uncertainty in her voice, but he smiled reassuringly. "It means you're my daughters forever. No one can ever take you away." Emily swallowed hard, then nodded. "Okay," she whispered, a small but genuine smile forming on her lips. The ceremony itself was brief but emotional. Nathaniel, dressed in a tailored suit, spoke with conviction as he promised to love and care for Emily and Grace as his own. The judge, a kind-eyed woman who had reviewed their case, smiled warmly as she signed the final documents. "Congratulations, Mr. Hayes," she said. "You're officially a father." The words sent a wave of emotion through Nathaniel. He glanced at the girls, who were clutching his hands tightly, their smiles beaming with a mix of joy and relief. As the room erupted into applause, Nathaniel realized that this moment wasn't just about them becoming a family. It was about healing and hope, a testament to the power of love and resilience. Olivia, standing in the back of the room, wiped away a tear as she watched the three of them embrace. She had been instrumental in helping them reach this point, and though she had tried to keep a professional distance, her heart swelled with pride and affection. After the ceremony, everyone gathered at the mansion for a small celebration. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, and Margaret had prepared a feast fit for the occasion. Emily and Grace ran through the halls, their laughter echoing like music. Nathaniel watched them from the doorway of the dining room, his chest tight with gratitude. Olivia approached him, holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider. "You look like a man who's finally found what he's been searching for," she said with a smile, handing him one of the glasses. "I think I have," Nathaniel admitted, his eyes never leaving the girls. "And it's all because of you." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Me? You're the one who stepped up and made this happen." Nathaniel turned to her, his expression earnest. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've been there every step of the way, not just for them, but for me too." Olivia looked down, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Nathaniel." Before she could say more, Grace burst into the room, dragging Emily behind her. "Come on," she exclaimed, her excitement bubbling over. "We're cutting the cake." Nathaniel chuckled, setting his glass down. "We'd better not keep them waiting," he said, offering Olivia his hand. She hesitated for only a moment before taking it, the warmth of his touch sending a jolt of certainty through her. As the evening wound down, the girls finally settled into bed, their exhaustion no match for their happiness. Nathaniel and Olivia found themselves alone in the living room, the fire casting a soft glow over the space. The day's events had left them both reflective, the silence between them comfortable but charged. "I was thinking about something Grace said a few weeks ago," Nathaniel began, breaking the quiet. Olivia tilted her head, curious. "What's that?" "She asked if I was going to marry you," he said, a small smile playing at his lips. Olivia's breath caught, her pulse quickening. She's a very observant little girl, she replied, her voice soft. Nathaniel turned to face her fully, his expression serious now. She's not wrong, you know. I've been thinking about it too. Olivia's heart raced as she searched his eyes, finding nothing but sincerity. Nathaniel. He reached for her hand, his voice steady. I love you, Olivia. I love the way you've cared for Emily and Grace, the way you've become part of our lives. And I can't imagine the future without you in it. Tears filled Olivia's eyes, but her smile was radiant. I love you too, she said, her voice trembling. Nathaniel reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. I wanted to wait, but today felt like the perfect moment, he said, opening it to reveal a simple yet elegant diamond ring. Will you marry me? Olivia laughed softly through her tears, nodding. Yes, she whispered. Of course, yes. The engagement added another layer of joy to their lives, and the months that followed were filled with plans and preparations. Nathaniel and Olivia worked as a team, not just in their personal lives, but also in their efforts to bring justice to the victims of the orphanage. With the legal case nearing its conclusion, the weight of their fight began to lift, replaced by the anticipation of a brighter future. Emily and Grace, now officially Hayes, thrived in their new environment. Emily's reserved nature softened as she began to embrace her role as an older sister, her protective instincts giving way to a more carefree spirit. Grace, ever the optimist, took to calling Olivia Mommy Olivia almost immediately, a name that filled the house with warmth every time it was spoken. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, Emily looked up at Nathaniel, her eyes shining with emotion. Thank you for not giving up on us, she said quietly. Nathaniel pulled her into a hug, his voice thick with emotion. I never will, he promised. As the stars twinkled above, Nathaniel, Olivia, Emily, and Grace sat together, a family forged not by blood but by love and resilience. Their journey had been far from easy, but it had brought them together in a way that felt unshakable. And though challenges would undoubtedly arise, they faced the future with hope, united as one. The courtroom was tense, the atmosphere thick with anticipation as the judge entered and called the room to order. Nathaniel sat beside Carter at the plaintiff's table, his eyes focused but determined. Olivia, seated in the gallery with Emily and Grace, exuded quiet strength as she offered the girls a reassuring smile. This was the day they had fought for, the day justice for the victims of the orphanage would finally be within reach. Months of preparation had led to this moment. Carter's team had gathered a mountain of evidence, from financial records that exposed embezzlement to testimonies from former employees and survivors who courageously stepped forward. Olivia's role as a key witness had been pivotal. Her detailed account of the abuse and neglect painted a vivid picture of the horrors that had taken place behind the orphanage's closed doors. The defense, representing the former director and staff of the orphanage, was scrambling. Their attempts to discredit witnesses were feeble, and their excuses rang hollow. Nathaniel watched their desperation with quiet satisfaction, his resolve to see this through stronger than ever. The proceedings stretched on for hours, each piece of evidence building an undeniable case against the accused. Carter, ever the masterful orator, delivered his arguments with precision and passion, ensuring the jury understood the gravity of the crimes committed. Nathaniel found himself stealing glances at Olivia and the girls, their presence a constant reminder of why this fight mattered so much. During a recess, Nathaniel stepped out into the hallway, where Olivia joined him. How do you think it's going? She asked, her voice low but hopeful. It's going as well as it can, Nathaniel replied, his jaw tightening. But I won't feel relief until the verdict is read. Olivia touched his arm gently, her eyes meeting his. No matter what happens today, you've already made a difference. You gave those kids a voice when no one else would. Nathaniel nodded, her words sinking in. It's not just about the past, he said. It's about making sure this never happens again. Their conversation was interrupted by the bailiff, calling everyone back into the courtroom. As they returned to their seats, Nathaniel's heart pounded in his chest. The weight of what they were fighting for felt heavier than ever, but so did his determination to see it through. The final moments of the trial were electric. The defense's last witness, a former administrator who had turned a blind eye to the abuse, crumbled under cross-examination. Carter's questions were sharp and unrelenting, exposing inconsistencies and outright lies. By the time the witness left the stand, their credibility was in tatters. Closing arguments brought the room to a hushed silence. Carter's voice rang clear and steady as he addressed the jury. This case is about more than justice for Emily and Grace. It's about justice for every child who suffered at the hands of these individuals. You have the power to ensure that no child has to endure what they did, to send a message that these actions will not be tolerated. I urge you to do the right thing. The jury deliberated for what felt like an eternity. Nathaniel remained in the courtroom, his hands clasped tightly as he fought to remain calm. Emily and Grace, despite their young age, seemed to understand the importance of the moment. They sat quietly with Olivia, their eyes darting nervously between Nathaniel and the jury box. When the jury finally returned, the room held its breath. The foreperson stood, her expression somber but firm. In the matter of the State versus Carmichael Orphanage Administration, we find the defendants guilty on all counts. A wave of relief and emotion swept through the room. Nathaniel exhaled deeply, his shoulders finally relaxing as tears filled his eyes. Olivia reached over to squeeze his hand, her smile radiant. The girls, still processing the verdict, looked to Olivia and Nathaniel for reassurance. "It's over," Nathaniel said softly, turning to them. "You're safe now. They can't hurt anyone else." The aftermath of the trial was a whirlwind of media attention and public reaction. News outlets praised Nathaniel's efforts to bring justice to the victims, and his reputation as a philanthropist soared. But for Nathaniel, the real victory wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments at home with Emily and Grace, knowing they could finally live without fear. Olivia, too, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The trial had been grueling, but seeing justice served was worth every sleepless night and difficult memory it had dredged up. Her bond with the girls deepened even further, and her role in their lives began to feel less like a responsibility and more like a privilege. One evening, as they all sat together in the living room, Grace climbed onto Nathaniel's lap, her bright eyes looking up at him. "Does this mean we can have a party now?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. Nathaniel laughed, ruffling her hair. "I think we've earned it," he said. Emily, sitting beside Olivia, smiled shyly. "Can we invite everyone who helped us?" "Absolutely," Olivia chimed in. "This is a celebration for all of us." The party was a joyful affair, held in the mansion's sprawling garden under twinkling fairy lights. Friends, supporters, and even some of the former victims who had testified at the trial gathered to celebrate the victory. The atmosphere was one of hope and renewal, a stark contrast to the darkness they had fought to overcome. Nathaniel watched the girls play with some of the other children, their laughter ringing out like music. Beside him, Olivia stood with a glass of champagne, her expression one of quiet contentment. "You know," Nathaniel said, his voice thoughtful, "this feels like the start of something even bigger." Olivia turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "Bigger than this?" "Yes," Nathaniel said, smiling. "We've shown that change is possible. Maybe we can do even more. Help more kids, more families. Create something lasting." Olivia's eyes softened as she reached for his hand. "If anyone can do it, it's you, Nathaniel." Nathaniel squeezed her hand, his gaze steady. "No," he said. "It's us." The night ended with fireworks. The sky lit up in brilliant colors as Emily and Grace watched in awe. Nathaniel stood behind them, his arms resting gently on their shoulders. Olivia leaned into his side, her heart full as she looked at the family they had become. As the final sparks faded into the night sky, Nathaniel felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. They had fought hard, and while the battle was over, their journey was just beginning. Together, They would face whatever came next, stronger and more united than ever. The weeks following the trial were filled with an odd mix of quiet normalcy and profound change. For Emily and Grace, life at the mansion now felt like home, free from the shadows of fear that had once loomed over them. The girls thrived in their routines, school, playdates with friends, and the comfort of a loving household. Nathaniel, however, found his thoughts increasingly occupied by something deeper. The desire to ensure their victory against the orphanage wasn't just a single act of justice, but the foundation for a lasting legacy. One morning, as the autumn leaves swirled outside, Nathaniel called Olivia into his study. She entered with a curious expression, balancing a cup of tea. "What's on your mind?" she asked, settling into the chair across from him. Nathaniel leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. "I've been thinking about what's next," he began. "The trial was just the beginning. There are still so many kids out there who need help, who've gone through what Emily and Grace did, or worse." Olivia's eyes softened, her gaze steady. "You're right, but what are you thinking? Starting another legal battle?" "Not just that," Nathaniel said, shaking his head. "I want to create something bigger, a foundation maybe. A place that can provide real support for children who've been through trauma. Legal help, counseling, safe housing, whatever they need." Olivia smiled, her pride evident. "That sounds incredible, and I think you're the perfect person to make it happen." The idea took root quickly, and within days, Nathaniel and Olivia were knee-deep in plans for what they would eventually call the Hayes Foundation for Hope. The name felt fitting, a tribute to the transformation that had begun with Emily and Grace. Carter, ever the pragmatist, was brought on board to handle the legalities, while Olivia took charge of building a team of passionate advocates and specialists. Emily and Grace, though young, became an integral part of the process. Nathaniel believed it was important for them to see how their experiences could inspire change. One afternoon, as they sat around the kitchen table sketching ideas for the foundation's logo, Grace looked up at Nathaniel. "Does this mean we're helping other kids like us?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart," Nathaniel replied, his voice warm. "We're going to make sure no one else feels alone or scared the way you did." Emily, who had been quietly drawing, spoke up. "Can we visit them? The kids who need help." Nathaniel smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "Of course, you can be as involved as you want to be." The girls exchanged a look, their bond stronger than ever. For the first time, Emily's guarded demeanor seemed to fade, replaced by a spark of hope and determination. As the foundation took shape, so did Nathaniel and Olivia's plans for their future. The mansion, once a symbol of Nathaniel's solitary wealth, became a bustling hub of activity and collaboration. Rooms that had once stood empty were converted into offices and meeting spaces, and the once quiet halls were filled with the sounds of people working toward a common goal. The girls adjusted to the new energy with surprising ease, often popping into meetings to offer their opinions or brighten the mood. Grace became a favorite among the staff, her cheerful personality a welcome distraction from the heavy topics they often discussed. Emily, though quieter, found her own way of contributing, assisting Olivia with organizing donations and writing thank-you notes to supporters. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Nathaniel shared an idea that had been brewing in his mind. "What if we open a center?" he asked, his tone thoughtful. "A physical space where kids and families can come for help." Olivia's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. A place where they can feel safe and supported, like a second home." Emily, who had been listening intently, looked up. "Can it have a library?" Nathaniel laughed, nodding. "It can have anything you want, Emily." Grace clapped her hands excitedly. "And a playground. It sounds like we're designing more than just a center," Olivia said with a smile. "We're creating a community." By the end of the year, the Hayes Foundation for Hope was officially launched. The first major event was a gala held at the mansion, attended by donors, advocates, and members of the community. Nathaniel, never one for public speaking, delivered a heartfelt speech that left the room in awe. "This foundation is not just about addressing the past," he said, his voice steady. It's about building a future where every child feels safe, valued, and loved. Emily and Grace taught me that even in the darkest moments, hope can shine through. And it's our job to make sure that light never fades for anyone. The applause was thunderous. But what touched Nathaniel most was the sight of Emily and Grace in the front row, clapping with all their might. Olivia stood beside them, her smile brighter than the chandeliers overhead. After the speech, Olivia pulled Nathaniel aside. "You were incredible," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "I had good inspiration," he replied, glancing at the girls. "And good support." Olivia laughed softly, leaning into him. "I think this is just the beginning." The foundation success brought new challenges, but Nathaniel and Olivia faced them together. Their wedding plans, once a quiet thought in the back of Nathaniel's mind, began to take shape amidst the chaos. Emily and Grace, ever the planners, took their roles as flower girls very seriously, insisting on picking out every detail from the bouquets to the dresses. One afternoon, as they sat in the garden poring over wedding magazines, Grace looked up at Nathaniel with a mischievous grin. "Can we call you Daddy now?" she asked, her voice innocent but hopeful. Nathaniel's heart swelled, his throat tightening with emotion. "You can call me anything you want," he said, his voice thick. Emily, sitting beside Grace, hesitated before speaking. "Does that mean we can call Olivia Mom?" Olivia, who had been listening from nearby, knelt down beside them. "Only if you want to," she said gently. "There's no rush." Emily studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I think we're ready." The words hung in the air, filling the space between them with a sense of closure and new beginnings. Nathaniel reached for Olivia's hand, his smile matching hers. They had built something extraordinary together, a family, a home, and now, a legacy that would outlast them all. The day of Nathaniel and Olivia's wedding dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself had chosen to bless their union. The mansion grounds were transformed into a stunning venue, with rows of white chairs set before an arch adorned with flowers in soft pastels. Guests arrived dressed in their finest, their faces glowing with joy and anticipation. For Emily and Grace, the day was nothing short of magical. They flitted around the house in their flower girl dresses, their excitement contagious as they made sure every detail was perfect. Nathaniel stood in the garden, adjusting the cufflinks Emily had chosen for him, a simple pair engraved with the initials of all 4 family members. His heart was light, a far cry from the man who had once believed that wealth and success were the only measures of a life well lived. As Carter approached to give him a final rundown of the day's schedule, Nathaniel waved him off with a smile. "For once," he said, "I don't care about schedules. Today is about family." Inside, Olivia stood before a mirror, her gown flowing like a dream around her. Margaret bustled about, fussing over final touches while Emily and Grace darted in and out, showering Olivia with compliments. "You look like a princess," Grace exclaimed, her eyes wide with awe. Olivia laughed, her cheeks flushed. "Thank you, Grace. And you two look like the most beautiful flowers in the garden." Emily smiled shyly, clutching Olivia's hand. "I'm glad it's you," she said softly. Olivia's heart swelled, her eyes misting as she leaned down to kiss Emily's forehead. "I'm glad it's me too," she whispered. The ceremony was simple yet profound, every word resonating with the love and resilience that had brought Nathaniel and Olivia together. As they exchanged vows, their voices steady and filled with emotion, there wasn't a dry eye among the guests. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the applause was thunderous, matched only by the cheers of Emily and Grace, who rushed forward to embrace them as soon as the ceremony ended. The reception that followed was a celebration of not just a marriage, but the creation of a family. Friends and supporters of the Hayes Foundation mingled with loved ones, sharing stories of how the foundation had already begun to make an impact. The first center, located in the heart of the city, was already providing shelter and resources to dozens of children and families. Nathaniel made his rounds, his smile never fading as he greeted guests and thanked them for their support. But his favorite moments were those spent with Olivia and the girls, watching as they laughed and danced together under the twinkling lights. For the first time in his life, Nathaniel felt truly complete. As the evening wound down, Nathaniel found a quiet moment with Emily and Grace. The girls were seated on a blanket under a tree, the stars twinkling above them. He joined them, sitting cross-legged as they gazed at the sky. "Did you have fun today?" he asked, his voice warm. "It was the best day ever," Grace declared, her grin wide. Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You and Olivia looked really happy," she said softly. Nathaniel reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face. "That's because we are, and a big part of that is because of you too." Grace tilted her head. "Does this mean everything's perfect now?" Nathaniel smiled, his gaze shifting to the stars. "Not perfect, Grace, but better, and we'll keep making it better together." The girls leaned into him, their small frames fitting perfectly against his sides. In that moment, Nathaniel felt the weight of the world lift, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace and purpose. In the months that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. The Hayes Foundation continued to grow, opening additional centers in nearby cities and expanding its reach. Nathaniel's mansion became not just a home, but a symbol of hope and renewal. The girls adjusted to their new lives with remarkable grace, excelling in school and making friends who adored their infectious energy and resilience. Olivia embraced her new role as both a mother and a partner, balancing the demands of the foundation with the joys of family life. Her bond with Nathaniel deepened with each passing day, their shared purpose and love creating an unshakable foundation for the future. One evening, as they sat together on the patio, watching the girls play in the garden, Olivia turned to Nathaniel with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been if you hadn't stopped that night in the rain?" she asked. Nathaniel nodded, his gaze distant. "All the time," he admitted. "It feels like fate, doesn't it? Like I was meant to find them." Olivia reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "Maybe they were meant to find you too." As the years went by, the legacy of the Hayes Foundation only grew stronger. Emily and Grace became active voices within the organization, sharing their stories to inspire others and advocating for children in need. Nathaniel and Olivia watched with pride as their daughters blossomed into compassionate, determined young women. On the Foundation's 5th anniversary, a gala was held to celebrate its achievements. Nathaniel took the stage, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd. "This foundation started with 2 little girls who showed me what it means to fight for hope. Today, it stands as a testament to what we can accomplish when we refuse to give up on each other." The applause was deafening, but for Nathaniel, the true reward was the sight of his family in the front row, Olivia, Emily, and Grace, their faces glowing with pride and love. That night, as the family returned home, Emily and Grace fell asleep on the couch, their dresses rumpled from a long evening of celebration. Nathaniel and Olivia stood together, watching them with quiet smiles. "They've come so far," Olivia murmured, her head resting on Nathaniel's shoulder. "So have we," Nathaniel replied, his voice filled with gratitude. Olivia turned to him, her eyes shining. "Do you think they know how much they've changed our lives?" Nathaniel smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "I hope so, but if they don't, we'll spend the rest of our lives showing them." As the fire crackled in the hearth and the stars twinkled outside, Nathaniel and Olivia knew their journey was far from over. Together, they had built a family, a legacy, and a future filled with love and hope. And they were ready to face whatever came next, hand in hand. Enjoy the story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next thrilling episode. See you in our next video. Take care.